Yeah, so I've got the recording turned on so that members who can't make today's meeting can join, or not join, they can see the meeting later on. It will be up on our YouTube channel and we'll post that after the meeting. Probably tomorrow we'll get that sent out with any follow-ups to the meeting. So we have a couple of minutes and then we can get started. And Lorraine is taking the attendance sheet around, so if everybody can make sure that they've got signed in, that would be wonderful. And thanks to everybody online for putting their names next to their picture. That's awesome. Thank you. All right. I think we can start. I'm so happy to see all of your faces here today and in our virtual world as well. Thanks to everybody for joining whichever way that they could today. I'm really glad that we have this option to offer both ways to participate, because that means that it means that some of our more distant members have more opportunities to join us, and I really appreciate that. All right. The first item that I have, we had sent out a survey a bit ago asking for the kinds of things you'd be interested in seeing for our program this coming year in 2023. And that is posted on the website now, the results for that portion of the survey, in the same area where the resources for the patterns and meeting notes are. So that's available for anybody that wants to go and have a look at what everybody said. Your executive team did use that resource in our meeting. Was that earlier this week? I think so. Who knows? I don't know what week this is. But we used that recently to decide which kinds of programming to look for in 2023. So Jen is taking that information and running with it. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jan now, and she's going to talk about program updates. We have new little speakers, so we don't have to have everybody wearing my headphones. So there's a clip at the back. You can clip it onto your shirt.
Okay. And try not to drop it. Okay, this is good.
Perfect.
Okay, program update for this year's coming up. Obviously today with the design wall up, you're all aware, and you saw it in the newsletter, that Sonia is going to walk us through some of her design processes that she used with the gallery wall, which was possibly one of my favorite quilts of the last quilt show, and other aspects of her composition of improv, which is amazing. Next month in July, we're going to have Lindsay Jansen, who's going to do the Big Stitch. Now, Big Stitch is really big in the modern quilt community. I've seen it at QuiltCon. It's on a lot of the modern quilt magazines and such, and Lindsay has been doing it for years and does a fabulous job. So she's going to do a teaching lesson on how to do it, and I think you'll all enjoy it. We'll get a note from Lindsay ahead of time, ahead of the next. She's not here today because she's flown off 2 days ago to, I think, out west, but I'm not sure. But we'll get a supply list from her so that you can then take on the project yourself. If you've never done Big Stitch, you might just find that it's the most wonderful thing you've ever tried. So there you go. In August, Michael Ann is going to do a workshop right in our regular Saturday Guild on colorworks. So that will also be a great fun project. And she's done that workshop many, many times, and she does an awesome job with it. So I think we'll all really enjoy that one. Now, coming up in the fall, we have Tara Evans, I think is her last name. Anyway, a young modern quilter from Manitoba, has a wonderful website, and she has very fresh, interesting, simple designs that are within everybody's capability. When we were planning this last year, we talked about having our September programming as encouraging people who didn't have a lot of experience with quilting and didn't necessarily have the confidence. So this is just an absolutely fabulous little workshop. And Tara's put the price way down. So it's going to encourage everybody to try it out. 30 people can participate right in the Zoom workshop, and using one of her patterns, walking you through all the steps to have a great accomplishment. The pattern is called Rising Sun, I think, or something like that, but it's got 2 half circles in it. But she does a great job. I've looked at some of her tutorials. She does a very, very helpful job. So if you've never tried doing curved seams and everything, this will be a wonderful experience. So very available, very accessible, and very encouraging for somebody who maybe isn't too confident. There's Tara. And on the website, when you look in, there's a picture of the quilt that she's doing for the workshop. So, and it's really, really super. It's a little wall hanging quilt, as I say, with 2 half circles on it. It's quite minimalist and beautiful. And I'm sure it will be very, very popular.
It's a half light wall hanging. Half light?
Half light, that's what it was, half light. So it almost looks like a rising sun or a setting moon with a reflection in water is the way I sort of looked at it. But once again, it would be totally according to your fabric choices, what it ended up looking like for you. Oh yeah, there it is. Isn't that gorgeous? Absolutely, so beautiful and simple and very accessible for absolutely everybody. October, we usually, traditionally, in fact, always have a very minimal program because it's the Thanksgiving, it's always the Thanksgiving weekend. So it'll mostly be just a sew-in, okay? In November, we have Sherry Noel, a highly established modern quilter and pattern designer. She's got a huge presence. She's been featured several times in Quilt Moderne. She's been in almost every single other quilting magazine. She's had shows all over the place. She's very, very prolific and very interesting. Like, her styles are kind of quirky and fun. She does some with words. She's really big into getting words and language into her quilts, and also into really, you might have remembered the one that with penguins that Sandra made a couple of years ago. Was it you, Sandra, who made the penguin? One of our members made the penguin one, which is so cute. It was a lot of her fab. I did the one with the Christmas trees and the Scandinavian gnome, all out of triangles. It was a lot of fun to do. And so just for something totally different, because we really wanted to have something really different. So in November, Sherry is coming by Zoom to our guild. She's going to be talking about how she expresses herself. And I think this is going to be lots of words in quilting. So how to put your voice out in quilting. And the workshop, Finding My Quilt Voice, there you go. And you'll see right beside her is a pillow that says Pillow Talk. And the workshop is to make a tombe, which of course in North America we call little gnomes. And it's quite complete. It's 20 inches high, and it is not a quilt. It is a figure. So start thinking of your favorite person, because this is going to be an automatic Christmas present. is absolutely 100% sure you will finish it during the workshop. And that's third weekend in November. So that's the rest of the year. As for next year, I made a plea a month ago, perhaps, for ideas. Then we had the survey as well. I've had a lot of response. More response is fine. We're always happy to hear your responses. I've already got something lined up for January, because you have to start early for January. And that is done. But we have other spots during the year. The one thing that somebody on the executive told me was, don't book the holiday weekend. We had a problem this year without even thinking. I booked a workshop for Easter weekend, and I apologize. As a result, we didn't get a full class for that, but there were still a lot of people in the class, but it probably would have totally sold out if I hadn't managed to put it on Easter weekend. Oh, well. So I guarantee you that will not happen last year. I will check the calendar for Easter and everything else that might conflict. Okay, so, but there's lots of ideas out there. Keep sending ideas in. Maybe not next year. If we have so many things to do next year, I'll pop it into the folder for the following year. But I love your suggestions.
Thanks, Jen. Any questions?
I think you maybe want this back.
Yes.
Lest I say, inappropriate words while I'm in the audience.
I just wanted a better pattern, half-light pattern.
Is it?
Is she registered for it? Is she?
No, the registration for our members is $20. The pattern is $10. And you'll get after you register, you'll get the information for downloading the pattern. It's a PDF. So you just go on our website and download the pattern. So basically the whole day is going to cost you $30.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm not sure that everybody at home heard, but the pattern for for Tara Evans is an additional purchase on top of the workshop cost. So for members, it is $20 for the workshop, and it's a $10 PDF download. Yeah, yeah, super. And it's only $30 for, or $35 for guests.
20 and 10, so it's only a $30.
No, sorry, for guests, to have guests register.
For the workshop is 30.
Okay,
plus
excellent.
that.
Right. So it's invite your friends who might be interested in quilting. Next up, we have Sharon, who's going to talk about block of the month. And Sharon gets to wear the little device.
Can I show the block?
Yes. So I'm going to turn it a little bit so that people at home. Okay.
Oh, look at this one. Can you hear me? Somebody shake your head or don't shake your head. Block of the month this month is June, of course, and I picked this because actually it's my birthday month. And so I was going to say, if there are any months that are available, we should tap into those people who have birthdays, because it's very interesting to do a little bit of research into your birthstone, which you've known forever as your birthstone. But I learned a lot about pearls this month, actually a couple months ago. So the colors I picked are pink, white, black, and gray. And I've got the pattern from Station Creek online. They have a free pattern that is a stash buster. They have one every year. And the idea for them is you do one a week. And at the end of the year, you have a quilt and enter it into a draw. But I took their pattern and it made it a lot easier, and the dimensions different. When I first started quilting and having leftovers. I went to a workshop and they talked about storing your leftovers by size. So I started out stripping everything into 2.5-inch strips or 2.5-inch squares or 5-inch squares. And I decided to change the pattern so that I could use those pieces of material. So it's 5-inch squares, 2.5-inch strips are what you need. And the directions are now, I think you sent them out. And this is
They're available on the website.
yeah, this is an example of the block when it's done. It's actually 4, I call it 4 units, goes together in one block. It's 21 inches. And so it can be addictive and you can put it all together. And I've also, and there's a picture of it on the web, used all my other scraps that weren't pink and white and black to make a whole bunch of more blocks. So it's a lot of fun and you can do a lot of strip sewing with it. Once I'd done a few, I think it took me about an hour to put these two together because I just kind of whipped them through. So if anything's unclear in the descriptions of that, by all means, contact me, but it goes together just like a classic 9 block. So I think that's everything.
Okay,
Thanks.
can I get the device back?
Oh, yeah, in my bra.
Here I was worried about people putting it on their ears. All right. So I wanted to schedule a sew-in to go along with that. And can I get a show of hands, people that are available for Tuesday, June 14th? This week, yeah, next Tuesday. And how about Thursday this week? Anybody online? Tuesday, you can use the reactions button. Or Thursday. I can pick the day that works better. Okay, so that's excellent. Thanks, Sharon. And a good idea for picking your birthday month, because I picked July, which is my birthday month. Also Tracy's birthday month. We are birthday sisters, which I was delighted to learn. Okay, the next item that I have, I wanted to thank Lorraine for all of the work that she's done for us on the newsletter. She's been putting together, gathering all of the information that people submit and putting it together and making it pretty and sending it out. But she's looking for other adventures, so she's stepping back from that. If anybody wants to do the newsletter role, let me know. You do need a little bit of technical stuff because we are working with, it's working with MailChimp, which is our program that sends out all of the mail that goes out to you. So you have to work with that editor, which is not terribly, it's not quite as friendly, not nearly as friendly as something like Word, but it's what we have. So let's, we can show you how to use it. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know. The next item that I have is the President's Challenge. And I'm really excited for this. And if I can find the share button. And I'm going to lose I still have some. Okay. All right. So everybody can see that okay? Excellent. So we're going to be, we are starting this month with a President's Challenge for 2022. I'm really excited. The first challenge that I've done, so or that I've created. So I've had some fun doing that. My intention for doing this is multifaceted. So I'd like everybody to create a small quilt that is inspired by something they find in their everyday life. I want you to be happy making it. I want you to find a technique that you want to try out, something new that you'd like to do, or something that, if you've always liked flowers, something floral based, find some joy in the creation, and there will be no quilt police. Whatever you create, if it makes you happy, that's what we're happy with. And the third component is that we want to make these quilts for display at our quilt show in 2023. Rather like we did in the quilt show in 2019, we had well, this is double-sided. We had the black and white +1 quilts that were all 20 inches. And so we provided the black and the white and the one color. And we had these hanging all around the Grosvenor house, and it was delightful. So we're looking at doing the same thing. And we're not at Grosvenor House this time, but there is a way that we can have them all displayed. The reason for the 20 inches or about 50 centimeters square is that we have rulers that are 20 inches to make cutting them to size, so that will be at the meetings a little bit later on, so that you can easily make them nice and square. So the guidelines for the challenge, we'd like your creation to be about 20 inches square, which is about 50 centimeters. You do have to have 3 layers. The edges must be finished in some way. They can be bound, they can be faced. You can use some fancy stitching. You can put beads and scallops all the way around it if you'd like.
Linda,
Yes.
we're only seeing your first slide.
I'm on the, oh,
It's just not moving through the slideshow for us.
okay. I will reshare. Are you seeing the guidelines now?
Yes, now we're good.
Thank you. All right, so some method of encapsulating all of the 3 layers inside of the edges is what I'm looking for. Some of you may find different ways to finish that quilt, and again, whatever makes you happy or you're experimenting with, try that. You may and are encouraged to use embellishment. And for the fabric that we're providing, so everybody will receive a fat eighth of one of my favorite colors. Now, Grello is one of my favorites. This is not quite Grello. This is the Northcott version. This is called Ginkgo from Northcott Colorworks. And I have to tell you, my team is amazing. This little, I have on the desk here at the front, I have a little wicker basket that has these little gems with the fat quarters all packaged up and very pretty. And it says President's Challenge on the little label on each little package. If I had done them, you'd just get a little square that might have been folded, I don't know. But Tracy did these for me. She said, oh, let me do that. And I said, oh my God, yes. So I want to thank Tracy so much for creating these little gems for us. Everybody in the room, make sure that you pick up one before you go today. So this, a piece of this fabric needs to be in the quilt top somewhere. It doesn't have to be big. And sometimes a little thing can be even zingier than a big piece. So, there's, I have enough here for everybody in the guild, which did you know we have 80 members now, which is amazing. Those members who are going to be unable to attend the guild meetings for the next little bit, let me know and I will mail those out to you. Okay, so those are the gems. The project can be your own original design or an interpretation of an existing design or pattern. And we're going to, these will be due at our December meeting. So I know that it can be a little bit intimidating for somebody to say to you, okay, Nick, go find something and create it. So wanted to provide some help along the way. So if you're using modern guild principles, the design elements are bold colors and prints, high contrast graphic areas of solid color, improv, minimalism, cropping and scale, negative space, alternate grid, and interpreting the traditional design in a modern way. So this presentation is also on the website for you to download. So you don't, you can refer to this later on. And Jan has also worked up a document that's got all of these modern quilting design principles, and that is in the same place in the website for you to download. And it's actually what we use at the quilt show. For those of you who were able to go the last time, there were little clothespins that had colors on them, and each design principle was a specific color. So you could know from the clothespin what the major element was in that modern quilt. Yes. Please speak into this.
Okay, so whichever way I'm supposed to talk. When these all come in and we get them all organized, they are going to be hanging at our next quilt show, which is in September of 2023. Just like they were at the 2019 one on the veranda outside. They're going to be inside this time. One of the reasons the executive decided that we'd go with the 20 inches so that they would all be the same. But they're just like at the last quilt show, they're going to be up high. So they're not going to have labels on them. So we're going to prepare a handout to everybody who comes in. It'll be like a little booklet that has the name of the maker and the name that you put on your quilt, and then your statement, your description of what you did with your little 20-inch President's Challenge. So when you look at the handout that Linda has sent to you, ask questions if there's anything you don't understand about it, but it's a guideline to help you make a quilt statement. So you can look at it and say, yeah, my quilt is very improvisational, and these are the kind of things I can say about my quilt, or my quilt is very minimalist, or my quilt is very bold colors. That's my focus. So it's all in there. So think about those things when you're designing your quilt, and also think about what you can say about your quilt. So whatever you say is right because it's your quilt.
Thanks, Jen. So where do you look for inspiration? Maybe like Jan was talking about in her funky houses, when she's walking her dog, she looks at the houses around and decides that there's an interesting shape, and that's what she created all of those funky houses from that kind of thing. And that's just observational, paying attention when you're walking around. And sometimes it's looking at big things, sometimes it's looking at small things. One of the things that I've been hearing about quilting in the last few years is what do you do in your quilting practice? And that practice part for me is very inspiring and important, because I do practice at making things so that they get a little bit better. I do practice looking for things, and practicing, as anybody who's done a musical instrument and had lessons, practice is one of the things that, though sometimes as a small child, I hated practicing, it is the way you get better. Not only do you find ways to succeed, you find ways to fail, which helps you in many ways get better. It helps you refine processes. So the suggestions that I have examples of are prompts, something that you might find in your everyday life that will allow you to be inspired in something you're looking at. And you never know where it's going to come from. Sometimes it's just an angle of sunlight in a particular window. One of the everyday inspiration examples, of course, is a Libs Elliott quilt design that she did for Absolute, based on the maple leaf. Libs was, she did a workshop for the Guild, and she's absolutely spectacular. The other examples I found and really liked was this drawing of inspired by a cut kiwi fruit. And the thing that I liked about this one is that they're using the shapes, but they've really explored colors with it to see how different things will look in different colors. So you may be inspired by something, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not a replica, it's just a way to approach what you might be making. Kleenex boxes are fabulous inspirations. They're all kinds of really great designs. And I know some guilds have had Kleenex box challenges that are really cool to I think some of the guilds look at either color or design or both, but some of the things that you find in your house can provide some inspiration for you. Socks. And this line of stone mill bread has quilting designs in the packaging. And this one, again, thank you, Tracy, for bringing this one to my attention. And all of the different flavors have different designs. Some of them are very quilty. Some of them are very organic, but they're, who would have expected a bread package to have so much inspiration? And it doesn't have to be just the quilt design that inspires you, but the quilting pattern as well. One of my very favorite quilters in the world is Beth Ann Nemish of White Arbor Quilting, and I've taken some of her classes. And she finds inspiration in flora and fauna. She tries not to go with the latest quilting trend of quilting, like of quilting designs, but to find her own interpretation of things. So she found this cross section of a banana plant stem and found it fascinating. And she has interpreted it in the quilting design on the right that has the little bubbles of it. It's the circle design. And so she's taken some of the shapes that are in that actual banana plant, but and put them together in a really interesting way. Vincent Bowell, he uses not the object of this itself, but the shadow. He's got a whole line of art that he's created from shadows of everyday things. David Owens Hastings, who was one of our workshop leaders and lecturers, he's I did take a couple of his other classes, and I absolutely love the way he interprets things. He's one of his classes is inspired by art, so you're taking a photograph or a piece of artwork and using a portion of that to look at design or color in your project. He's similarly inspired by architecture. He's looking at the shapes that can be interpreted. And this quilt that's pictured here was inspired by dappled twilight. And so all the different colors of blue with few little sparks. Now they could be ginkgo, I'm not sure, but that's a place that you can insert them in here and there. See, these are some of David's other works. So the quilt is on the right-hand side. It's inspired by that vase. It's a large sculpture. That's probably not a vase, it's a sculpture. But he liked the shape of it. And so the shape was translated into the quilt. And in this one, which was a QuiltCon reject, unbelievably, even the best quilters have rejects, the shapes were inspired by Nano Okita admiring herself in a mirror. So he's taken shapes from the artwork and interpreted them. Nicholas Ball in his lecture, he's using vegetables for finding his inspiration and finding ways to make them look interesting. And hopefully Kristen will show us the series of quilts that she's made from his workshops at some point. I'd love to see those. She's, I think, had them on her social media a little bit. Cindy Grisella, who we've had recently, one of the pieces that she's created is called Hint of Lime. Again, so I was looking for examples of, the whole composition is yellows, golds, oranges, and pinks. However, she inserted just a very small, probably can't see my nose at all, probably on the lower row, on the left-hand side, there is one skinny strip of lime green. Just gives it a little spark. So even just a hint of this accent color of ginkgo, even if none of the other colors seem to go with it, might be what gives your product, your mini quilts a little bit of life. The next inspiration example that I have is called Reflections of Red. This appeared in Curated Quilts by Abigail Hesh in the red issue, which is fairly recent. And what I really loved about this one is that she's taking the lakefront. There's not very much red in the lakefront, maybe at sunrise or sunset, but you would expect there to be blues or greens, but it's red. So she's taking the shapes, but drawing the colors entirely from a different perspective. So when you're looking for everyday inspiration, just be conscious that you're looking for inspiration. Sometimes looking at an item and reducing it to looking at just a portion of it so that you're looking at the shape or the lines or just the color. Sometimes if you limit your color palette to, I'm going to just do 2 colors or just do shades of 1 color can be helpful. Using a design wall or design floor or design bed can also be helpful. And I'm glad that Sonia is doing our presentation here shortly on how she uses a design wall. And Jan talked about the artist statement that we'll be looking for to go along with your piece and categorizing it. And how will we support you through this? Some of you won't need any support at all. Some of you are quite capable and very happy to go off on an improv journey and create something without a lot of support, but that's not everybody. And I want to try and make sure that everybody feels comfortable in making this little item. So I would like to try and buddy up. So if you're comfortable in doing that, then we pair you with somebody who's not quite so comfortable. So there'll be a sign up form that will ask if you would like to be like to collaborate with someone and whether you're comfortable leading or needing support. We'll also have some Zoom sessions. And again, in today's program, having Sonia present her gallery wall improv. The Modern Quilt Guild website is fabulous for their block studies in their quilts. And we also have our library that's got lots and lots of books on creating minis, doing improv, and whatever research you find yourself. And that's it. What happens? There you go. Okay. All right. So questions about the President's Challenge? All excited? Me too, me too. All right, excellent. Okay. And that takes us into Sonia's presentation. So I'm going to turn the screen. Hopefully we get.
Hopefully everyone can see the design wall.
And you get to clip the microphone on. There is a little clip that you can.
I'm really glad I don't have to wear those headphones. I'm looking forward to that. How's that? Okay, I'll pin this up because most of you, or some of you may never have seen it, and some of you have probably forgotten what it looks like anyway. I did bring some pens. Okay, aren't I prepared?
Excellent.
Probably 2 will be enough. Okay, can everybody see it? Kind of. If not, you can move up. Yeah, it was interesting, your little thing on inspiration, because the way this started was a little trip to IKEA. How many people have been inspired by IKEA? And I was wandering around, and probably you all do this, right? You're looking at quilt patterns everywhere, like on the sidewalk and your bathroom tiles. And I opened up my Scotiabank online account yesterday, and it had like a banner of what looked like quilt blocks across the top of it. So in IKEA, I was in the kitchen department, and they had dishwashers with a panel on the front that you could take off and change. And one of them had all these half square triangles on it. And I thought, oh, that looks really cool. I think I'll take a picture and take it home. And so I got home, and I had this coral fabric lying around. I thought, well, I'll try to put something together that looks like the dishwasher. And I had some gray in there and some white, and I had it up on my design wall, just the blocks, not sewn together. And I thought, oh, geez, it looks so boring. So around the same time, Kristen had called me and said, we have this 45-inch space at the venue that the quilt show was at, and we don't have anything to put on it. Do you have anything that size? And normally I don't do wall hangings very much anyway. But I said, well, I'm fiddling around with these blocks, and I'll see what I can come up with. So that's what I did. I started fiddling around, and often it's just serendipitous, right? What you end up with. Because in improv, whatever you start with, you never end up with. It's a process. And there's a Picasso quote that I've mentioned several times that I really love. And it's like, why would you make something if you already know what it looks like? You know, so if you're out there looking at a tree and thinking, okay, I'm going to do my challenge as a tree. Okay, maybe it'll start as a tree, but when it ends up, maybe it looks like a fish, who knows, you know? So just roll with it. That's the fun of it, is the rolling with it. So I think the first thing to do in the process is define what you like. I know we've had all these improv quilters during the year, right? Who've had fabulous presentations, and I'll probably repeat some of the same stuff, but you have to know what you like. And you have to set parameters. Like, you can't just dive in. You've got to have some guidelines for yourself to follow. And I like to actually sit down and write them down. I find it's really helpful to write it on paper, what I like to do. So what would be on my list would be, I like to work with blocks, because I look at each block almost as like a page from a sketchbook. And I like to make a composition in that block. And coming from, you know, many years of traditional quilting, I'm very comfortable with the block. And I like working in that range of 6 to 10, maybe 12 inches, and then arranging something in it. So I like that. I like using scraps. I'm very cheap, and I like to get a whole free quilt top out of just my scraps, right? And I have little bins of scraps, and a lot of them are strips that we're binding, or, you know, offcuts from backing or other blocks or whatever. So they're all within a certain size range. Like, a lot of them are around 2.5 inches or 3 inches maybe. So if I was doing something like this, I'd be using that kind of strip. So I do a lot of stuff in strips. And if I want to throw in some other color or something and buy a fat quarter, I would cut it into strips of 3 inches to 1 inch. So know what you like. I like a fairly minimal color scheme. I know, I admire people that do lots of lovely, busy, floral kind of stuff, you know, but that doesn't work for me. I'm just no good at it, and it's not my style, and I don't really like it. So I would write that down. I like a minimal color scheme, maybe 3, 4, 5 colors, but have lots of variety with my scraps in the same colors, but maybe different color values to give a lot of depth to it. So those are the kinds of things that I like. Now, once, you know, I've decided that, and I had these boring blocks on the wall, then it's like, okay, what am I going to do now to make something more interesting? So if I gave you this, how can I make it more interesting? Give me some ideas. Yes. That's always my go-to, right? Is kind of get up. And it was the same with these. Because they're half square triangles, there were already angles in there. So when I cut them into chunks, I had those built-in angles, which was kind of nice to work with, right? So what else could I do?
Add an odd size or odd shape to the edge to wonky it.
Yes, I could cut a chunk that was maybe on an angle or something there. If I cut into it, I could cut a curve into it, right? What else? Yeah, exactly. I could put another color in it or something in here that would be, yeah, a different color or at least a different shape, right? To give it some variety. So a lot of quilt teachers will say, just ask yourself, what if? Or Sherry Lynn Wood will say, ask yourself, and what? Okay, I've done this. So now, and what am I going to do after this, right? So with the half square triangles, I did cut some of them on an angle. I needed a punch of color, so I added the purple. I like adding a graphic touch because that will pop out at you and give some interest, right? Dots or stripes or something kind of graphic, or even a large print. But if I use a large print, I would only use one per quilt because it's going to be too much if you have too many large prints in there. So that's how I would work. And then to put these together, again, to quote Sherry Lynn, she will say, okay, what is the block saying to you? I don't know what the heck the block is saying to me. I know in some of the presentations we had, a lot of the teachers will say, just trust your gut. You know, what's your intuition? Well, I don't know. My gut is sometimes out of whack. You know, I think what they're trying to say is look at the principles of design. Those of you like Mary that were with us since the beginning of this group practically, how many years did we spend looking at principles of design? I think 3 years, that's all we did. We talked about principles of design. So if you're putting the composition together, then kind of keep that in mind. Sure, go with your gut and your intuition. But if you're stuck, it's another way to look at it. Okay, so I would start here and I'd start with, for this size block, about 6-inch strips. And I just use the extension table on my machine to kind of gauge. It doesn't have to be exactly, but that's kind of what I'm aiming for. I'll go with that for this inside part. So I'll randomly sew some together. And these ones are randomly cut up. And then I'll just start arranging them, keeping in mind that I want some balance, I want some harmony, I want some rhythm through the thing. I want good proportion. So if you looked at, say, I'm trying to figure out, the nice thing about this is you don't know how it's put together, right? That's what I like about it. So say here, I started with this piece, the pink on top and the white. And maybe I've put a few of these together, then I'm going to say to myself, okay, what am I going to put next to that? So then I'm going to switch up just to give that, even that little piece, a little bit more interest. I've switched up the corals. Now that wasn't really intentional because I ran out of one and but that's the great thing about improv. You can make do with whatever you have. So that gives a little interest there. And then this piece, rather than having just all white, I've added a little light gray just to give a little bit more interest. And then I have the pop of graphic. And because I've got that pop there, then for proportion and so on, I need another pop somewhere else, right? To draw the eye over and balance it. So I'm going to balance it with the purple. So the thing about improv is it's hard work. You are making decisions. Every single piece you put together, you're making a decision about it. If you buy a pattern, it's all done for you and you just choose your colors maybe, or if you're really lazy, use a color that's on the front of the pattern, right? So it is a lot of thought that you're putting into it. And I can see why. I know when Shannon Fraser did her lecture, she made the comment that she does one improv project and then she does a pattern. And then she does an improv project because it's so relaxing to just use somebody else's pattern, you know? Anyway, do you get the idea of putting together the inside part? So once this gets to around 6 inches, then I start thinking about pushing it out with sashing, which is traditional, but makes the block bigger. And in a quilt, which I'll show you in a minute, it allows you then to have a flow through joining the blocks together. So when I do the sashing, I want to make that a little bit interesting too. I just don't want to have the same width all the way around, same color, whatever. So I've broken it up with this strip of white here, for instance, to lead into that background. I have the different colors in it. In this one, this gray is actually put into the sashing. And yeah, so what I did the layout for this, I tried all kinds of things, but then I looked at it and think, okay, each little composition should be looked at on its own. So I think I'm just going to go really simple here and just put it out like you would hang it on a gallery wall. So that's how it went. So any questions about that process?
I only see a couple of spots where you started with the half square triangles.
Yeah, I don't know how, I can't tell you what it originally looked like because I didn't have a picture of it. But you can see here, this would have been attached here, right? And then because I've got this angle here, I've put in an angular part there. These are slightly angular here. And this is something I like to do as well. I like to make pieces look like they're floating on top of another piece so that there's some depth to the piece. Like if you use all the same value and it's a little bit boring because you're not looking into the quilt. I like the idea of looking into it. Like this one, you could almost imagine that the pink is kind of just cut out and put on top of the white, right? So here, I just put a little purple on the end of that gray and then sew that on. So it looks like it's kind of floating on top of it. So any questions about that?
I also like how you've got the L being echoed throughout.
Yes.
Well, almost pretty well everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So another principle of design, right? Creating unity that way. Yeah.
I also find it interesting, like your middle block, that stripe is always in the middle.
This,
Then a lot of your other pieces, it's kind of like you put them either at the top or stop it on the.
yeah. And that wasn't intentional, right? It just, yeah, it just happened. I had 4 or 5 other blocks as well that I made, but that I just didn't like them quite as much. So they're sitting at home somewhere, but yeah, exactly.
I think one of my favorite parts of Sonia is the way the white, gray, black parts almost look like structures because the coral is inserted into the block in various different ways so that you can look at, like the one in the middle, for instance, the purple angle and
Yeah.
the black and the gray, like that's a structure on its own. The bits on the inside that are coral are almost like background behind that structure.
Yeah. So that's what I mean about creating depth, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you're actually looking into the block.
I love the way you brought the coral in. It's really effective.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that was kind of an accident, but you know, once I realized I liked that, then I just kept doing it, right? And it could be the same with the L shapes, you know, I kind of like one, so then I'm going to repeat it in the others. So, yeah.
Bottom left looks like a bottom.
Yeah, it's funny because some of the ones I eliminated, I thought they looked too much like a house or something, you know, and I didn't want it to look that realistic. So get lost in the maze. Yeah.
How long did you have those blocks up on your design wall, walking away and coming back and walking away?
These ones, oh, I could leave them up for a week and walk past them and back, and yeah. And if, you know, I think every quilt I've made, at some point I hate it. Usually in the middle somewhere, I think, where is this going? I hate this. But and I read a quote once that said, well, that just means it's unfinished if you hate it. So just keep working at it, change something around, move it. Yeah, so I'll leave stuff on the wall for quite a while and keep walking by. And if there's something that's bugging you, you know, 4 days later, if it's still bugging you, then take it apart, cut it up, or do something else with it, right? Yeah. Put it in your scrap pile. Well, yeah, it's funny though, because I tend to be kind of a slapdash person, right? But I think this, because I'm doing it in a block like that, it kind of focuses me, right? And I can really concentrate on the design. So I brought just a couple of things to show you the process, maybe in a little bit more detail.
Can I take a picture of the quilt so that I'll send it afterwards so that
Yeah,
some of the video on screen is a little bit blurry. So I'm just going to take
yeah.
a few pictures.
Oh, and the quilting, I thought just that straight line matchstick was appropriate. I wouldn't want to do anything, you know, to take away from the design. Thanks. Okay, so for the process, I just made up these little examples here to show you. So I might start with something like that. So again, they might be just random pieces I've sewn together. But you can see I just picked up, I had this little Ruby Star quilt and just a small piece of it. So picked up the colors from that, but I've added a little graphic detail there with the dots to tie it. It's just so I don't have solid pink everywhere. I'm breaking it up with that. It kind of reads as pink, but it's different. So I probably start making that piece, add that, put the strip there, and then. So this is how I would go about doing an actual quilt this way rather than just a wall hang. Okay, I've got the orange there, so I'm going to add a different value of orange, which ties in with the bird. So this is this block is bigger. It's closer to 9 inches, I think. So for my initial little composition there, I'll aim for maybe 6 or 8 inches. Again, just use my table on my machine as my guide. And then I'm going to push it out with sashing, just 2 strips of sashing. Do I have another one there? No. And this is what I do quite a bit when I make quilts. So I'll just add this sashing to extend the design, make it a little bigger. So you can probably see why I've added that. So I'm going to break the sashing up with something more interesting. I don't want the sashing to be boring either. And I've picked up the dot to balance that out. The 2 purples there to balance each other out. Slightly different purple on the bottom. And then in order to create some movement through the next blocks for the whole quilt, I'm going to put, say, that there. So 2 pieces of sashing around that initial center part. And I'm using the orange there because I've got quite a bit of orange there and I want to balance it out, right? So, and then if I add another block, I don't think with this one I would put them all, you know, one under the other. I'm going to stagger it. So in order to make a connection, This sashing is going to join up with that. So it'll help the eye flow through it by connecting it a little bit there. And then this will be the pink. I always designate in my head anyway, a background color, just so it keeps me a little bit more organized. So the pink is my background color. And that is always going to touch another pink on the block, right? So that will create flow through there. And then if I hook up some of these little connecting points, it will also create flow through it. I think if I was making a quilt for this, you can probably see there are a couple of things I might want to do. I would want more different values of purple. I don't want just that flat purple all over the quilt. I want some lighter ones, some darker ones, maybe some prints like that. So I would go through my scrap bin and just pull out everything that looks like it would tone in with that. And I think I would do a lighter pink if I could find one for the background as well as that pink, just to have some variation in the background as well. More interesting, right?
Sonia, can I get you to hold up the top block closer to the camera so they can get a little better picture of the,
Oh, yeah.
can you bring it closer so they can see the dots maybe?
Oh, yeah. Does that work?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the process. And then if I was specifically buying fabric, yeah, I would, but I'm using a lot of scraps. So I just go through my bins and pick out I'll show you in a minute, a couple here that this one as well will show you the process. It all fits on here. Okay, so here I'm going to start with this one. So this one, my background is going to be, I numbered them so I would know, white. And then the colors I'm using are very limited, right? I'm using a pink. I don't know why I ended up that, but I don't usually use that color very much. But so I've got black, pink, gray. Notice I've got another graphic element. I've got a dot this time instead of a stripe.
That would work really nicely for the pearl. All
Yeah.
the colors of
Yeah.
pearl are in there.
Yeah. Okay. So I would have started with this section in here. And then I've got, a strong vertical line there. So these are horizontal. Again, thinking about the principles of design, right? And I've got some different values of the gray. And I have some low volume, little tiny gray and white prints that I'm just using up. Where'd you go? Choose here. Okay, so then I can join this one up and the gray is going to flow through, right? This connection. And then this one. And that. I think this is the most fun part of it is just, you've got all these blocks and I don't think about when I make each block, I don't think about, okay, is it going to go with that one? I just make them. And then because I've got a unified color scheme and so on and similar shapes, my rectangles, it's all going to flow together in the end. But I can play with how I'm going to put them on the design wall. And that's lots of fun. It's like putting a puzzle together. Anybody likes jigsaws with little of this, so. And I don't know if this will work, but. I don't know, something like that, but I would play with it. And sometimes when I look at it, I think it's too busy. I don't like things that are too busy. So I'm going to put more of the background color in between. And with this one, I don't think I would make the whole thing like that. I would break it up and have more negative space in there. But you get the idea. Rectangular shapes, the background color, simple color scheme. minimalism, basically, so. Okay, so I don't know how much time we have, but I brought a few quilts just to show you quickly. What you'll end up with then if you sort of carry that through. And you could do a much bigger scale. My scraps are small, so I tend to do a smaller scale, but that's the idea of what you will get. Now with this one, again, it was just all scraps except for, I think I went out and bought another blue, a little blue print because I didn't have just a fat quarter. And you need very little, like this is an Allison Glass print. And I had maybe like 1/8 of a yard or something of that. You know, you could use up stuff that you love through the whole quilt, just to intersperse it. So same idea. I would have, let's see if I can pick one out here. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Whoops, that's okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how I did it. Okay, here's one here. You see, I did this center part here, and then I would add on
There you go.
sashing that is more interesting, right? That carries the design through here, and looks like I added it there, or maybe there. I can't tell exactly. But I'm starting with that center composition, and then I'm adding sashing to kind of carry it out into the rest of the quilt. The background here is some, I had this whole bin of white stuff, like little tone on tone, you know, all that stuff you've had over the years. And you don't see it as much in this one, but some of the other quilts I've made as charity quilts, I've used up, I'm not kidding, I've used up a ton of that just by using all the different little prints that were white or off-white or cream in one quilt. Here I had some off-whites, and I also used a really pale blue as part of the background as well. And again, that will give it more depth just by.
I also like how you've got this stair sashing and you worked in blocks of.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So instead of just putting the white border all the way around, I've put the design into the border as well, and then carried it out to the binding as well. So, yeah.
How do you put the blocks together? Like they're not all the same size.
They're all, I square them up to the same size. Yeah. That allows me to flip them if I want, because I might get a more interesting design if I flip it. Usually what I do at first is I'll make up 4 and I'll put them together and see how they work. And there might be something that I really like in it that I want to keep repeating. So that's how I approach it. So these ones would have been done just across. Yeah. And then the border with the design in it would be added after. Yeah.
And then again, the binding is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And often that's because I run out of something, you know. It's just okay, there's that one. Here's another one here. I think I'm probably ready to try something new, you know, like my little list might change next year. My list of, you know, just using blocks and just using rectangles and whatever might change, but. Yeah, so I had a ton of yellow greens in my scrap bin. So I pulled them all out. And you can see with this one that I have just used yellow, green, gray, and then my background is cream and white. And my little graphic touch is the dots, right? So I had random pieces of dotty fabric around, so I used those. And it's great because I had this Japanese fabric that forever, and I had used it all up except for a little tiny piece, and I love that fabric. So it went in there. Yeah, same thing. It's the same thing.
Can I just ask, because I'm seeing, like, it looks like a block here, but then was there like a little bit of sashing that was designed little piece, or is that the next block? I'm having a
Be the next block,
Okay.
yeah. And that's what I like about it. You can't really
Yeah.
tell how it's put together. Yeah, same thing. It's a little composition in the middle. And then this is a piece of sashing here, you see? and here, and this is maybe sashing from this block. But, yeah,
And I also see that you've got some like more intense, and then you've got a lot of neutral.
Yeah.
A lot of negative space, and then more.
Yeah.
packed in. That's cool.
yeah. So when you're playing with it on the design wall, you can decide, you know, how you want it to go. Like this pink and black here, I know I would definitely give it more breathing room, right? I'd spread it out more. Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah. And then this one only has,
Actually quilted it yellow. I think we should point that out. It looks, when you get up close, it's so cool.
oh,
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
nice.
yeah, now this one, some of you have seen this one before. Same idea. So I've got, my background here is grays, whites, creams, whatever I could find. This is one where I had done more like that, like my initial couple blocks. And I thought, oh, one of them had like a really narrow strip in it. And I thought, I really like that. I think I'll do all the blocks just like that, right? So this is all scraps from some other stuff. And again, it's change in values with the strips themselves and with the background, just to give it more depth and interest. And a little graphic touch with the that black and white stripe, which I've taken into the binding as well, and this into the binding, so it kind of echoes that. Some of the strips I tried to make a little more interesting by putting another color in the middle of them or at the top of them.
And they're not just solids. Like this one's got little, there's a little bit of
Ombre.
design in it.
Yeah.
And a little bit of check here.
Yeah.
So really gives some depth.
Yeah, that's right. And you have some visual texture. And that's why I like ombre too, because the ombre gives you that feeling of depth as well. And this one too, I did put a little bit around it, a little bit of border around it, but I just carried the design into it. So, yeah. Yeah, I do like that. That's one of my favorite ones. Yeah. Yeah, so this would have been similar to what my initial couple blocks were like. And then I thought, oh, I like that stripe. I think I'm going to go with that. So, and last one. This is for people that have never done improv, and it might be a way to jump into it. That's why I brought this particular quilt. And this was in the last quilt show. So it was actually a pattern by Jessica Whalen, who's Birdie, what's her Instagram handle? Something Birdie. Anyway, she had this in Simply Modern magazine, and hers, she is over the top with bright colors and crazy designs and so on. And I had posted that on Instagram. She said, oh, I really like the low volume version, but it's totally different from what she would do. So this is done as a 9 patch. So if anyone's more traditional quilter, it is a 9 patch. And it has traditional hourglass blocks in it if you love making that. But it also has improv. So part of the 9 patch is the hourglass, some version of split rail or log cabin, which is these. So this one, I had this art gallery yellow that I really love that print. And I just picked out all the other yellows in my stash. And you can see you don't need very many, right? You don't need a whole whack of fabric now that it's all $22 a meter or whatever. So I picked those all out, and some are little tiny prints and so on. And then some of the blocks are just plain fabric, but I chose some Carolyn Friedlander that I had, and something with a lot of visual texture to it. She calls it, I think it's called Going My Way or something, because it forms arrows. So, but it's just a thought that for those people that have never done improv, like you could try combining the two in a kind of a traditional manner like that. So.
Gives a little more structure too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when I started this, I just started making the 9 patches, and then I'd put 4 9 patches together to see how they worked and how they looked. So anyway, that's it. Any questions? Hopefully it helps with the challenge. But like I said at the beginning, just write down what your groove is, right? Do you like doing curves? Do you like doing circles? Do you like doing rectangles like me? Yeah.
Any questions from the group? Who is the designer for the last quote, please? Someone's asking.
Jessica Whalen. Yeah. And I just can't remember her Instagram name. It's Birdie Beetle or something like that. Yeah, she's Australian. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. That was definitely awesome. I've had 2 years to think about this, right? Yeah, I was a little worried about that. That's why I asked Linda, is there anything I should do but it's the kind of thing that, yeah, you need to be up close with it, I guess.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I know it takes a lot to put a presentation together, and having all of your examples is wonderful too.
Yeah, well, like I said, oh, Janet asked me that probably in January, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what hell that time it's stressful.
And the next item that I have is show and share. I didn't have anybody send anything in. So hopefully there was some things that people brought. This is this one. Thanks, Marianne. So this one got created on the sew day that we had at the London Kitchen Studio. The blocks were all donated, and the fabric was all donated. So I put this together so that the colors on one side and the black and white on the other, with a mix in the middle. Yeah, so this is will go to the London Cross Cultural Center.
Did you do the quilting?
I did. Yes, yes. It's called Love Always. It's got a little heart in it,
Nice. Beautiful.
and it's got a piece back. All from fabrics that were donated.
Someone's lucky.
Yeah. There we go. Thanks. All right. Who else has some show and share? Perfect.
I think I showed this one
I'm going to
before.
clip this to your girl.
Not lying right at you.
There we go.
Great. This one I showed a work in progress. It's a Kawandi. And you start from the outside and you work inwards. I don't know if you've read about them at all. It's all done by hand.
I'm going to move you just a little bit.
Okay, it's all done by hand. And yeah, I sort of changed my quilting, and you can sort of see how I changed it. And I did sort of cheat because I wanted the edges to be finished around them. I'll pass it around for those that are here that you can really look at it a little bit. And it's a good way to use up scraps and that kind of thing. And most of them that I've seen online are smaller than usual, and like than a big quilt kind of thing. So
Tell us about the corners.
the corners, oh, these are, you have to have these on there, and I forget why. I'm sorry, I didn't write it down for my notes, but they're sort of, and actually I did them at the end, the little things right there. And you're supposed to do it right near the beginning as well. So what you do is you start with your back, and then you put batting in it. And I use a lot of old sheets, the flannel sheets in there, because I didn't want it to be very heavy. And then you go all, actually, I think the first round you do without putting the batting in, and then you add the batting in, and then you're stitching really quite close. So it's kind of a really interesting process.
there is a YouTube on how to do it, and it makes sort of more sense of doing them that way.
Can you say what it is again?
Kawandi, I think it's Kawandi. And it started, I think this has moved to India, but I think initially it was in Africa that it started. This is more, I guess, of an art quilt that I have here. It is a technique of using black fabric and using bleach to get the orangey color. And I took a workshop with somebody through the Embroiderers Guild probably more than 10 years ago. And then I finally just finished this recently. And I'll show it here again. So in the corners, those were probably using a pencil, like the end of a pencil, the eraser end with bleach and putting it in there. And then this center area is done with stencil, making stamps or stencils. Stamps, I guess it was done with. And I can't remember what this is, whether it's just a spray bleach on it. And you mix bleach and water, and you have to put you have to dip it in vinegar and water to stop the bleaching process. And the quilting was kind of fun. I did the matchstick here, and then a wavy line. I'll show it here first on the center part and into the corners. So those were three different sort of techniques that I used when I did the bleaching. And this one was a real, I don't know, like a week isn't long enough for me to have it up on the design wall. Maybe it's a few years or even a decade. And this was sort of one of those that was quite some time. This is all painted, so I don't know if it qualifies in the modern design, but it's painted. It does.
Because you're here in the Modern Guild and it's here.
So it's painted, and then again, it was done many years ago. And I think the paint I used then was acrylic, then mixed it with a fabric medium, and then painted it on down here. This was left white. I'm not very good at free motion. And so you can see from the back, when I did the trees, I'll show it here first, that they don't really match what's on the front. And so what I used was a marker to get those, where those little indentations are. I used a marker to fill it in to make it look more solid. And I bought, when we had 10,000 villages, when we had 10,000 Village store in London, I bought some of their bamboo hangings. And they're kind of neat because you can, it's sort of two levels, and you can slide the pocket into there, and it works really well. So my bathroom now has 3 different things that I can hang in the bathroom.
The microphone needs to go to the next person.
Oh, they're not as cumbersome as the other one.
No. Thanks. Who else has show and share?
I probably need chair to stand on. And it's still got the clips around the spine. Oh, that's a great idea, Maria.
Yes, but it can't be me because I can't go up and down.
Okay, I can go up.
Oh, I'll go up.
I can happily go up.
No.
Oh, okay, sure. Isn't it nice to have helpers? That's from Shannon Fraser's workshop. And it was supposed to be 6 blocks by 6 blocks, but I wanted to make it for my son and daughter-in-law, and they wanted it for a bed. So it ended up being 6 blocks by 7 blocks, and it still wasn't quite big enough. So I improvised. Thank you, Sonia. And across the top, I did minis of all the blocks and I just put them together until they fit. So the little minis at the top, I'm very, very happy with it because I just love the colors. They just make me feel like a summer day or something like that. I just absolutely love it. It was a fun project. I had, when I got towards the end and I was thinking about the quilting, I thought of all kinds of fancy ideas of what I wanted to do. And then I thought, no, it's all about the big triangles and the lovely colors. So I just did, I sort of lined up with the perpendicular side of the triangles, and it's just, they're 1.5 inches apart. So they're really not all that dominant really at all. So I'm super happy with the way it turned out. And that was a fun workshop. Really enjoyed it. She was wonderful.
And the binding?
The binding is this fabric, which is in it here. I had enough of that that I could put all the binding out of that fabric, which I thought was, because it didn't, there was no one other color in it that should go on the binding. It sort of was the non-color to fit. Oh, and the back was fun. Once again, thank you, Shannon Fraser, because doesn't matter which side is up. Yeah, although this is, okay, I will jump up shortly, Maria. When Shannon had her lecture, she talked about challenging herself to take the scraps from making a quilt top. And now I always make scrappy backs and I always use up my fabric, which is a great policy to use up your fabric. But I had never thought of challenging myself to use the cutoffs. So the cutoffs were all these triangles in here, and they were different strips because some of them I had width of fabric and I cut all my triangles, and some of them were fat quarters and whatever I had, because almost all of it was from my sash. So all of the triangles were different sizes. So I just sort of put them together and I ended up getting the 12 of them out of everything that was left over. And then I still had some bits left. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll put the bits in these pieced stripes. So on all 4 sides, there's pieced stripes. And so, and then I had bigger pieces of 4 fabrics. So that was a busy one. So it had to be opposite the other busy one. And then that's a calm one, and it had to be opposite the other calm one, so they didn't fight with each other. But apart from that, it's all basically strappy. But I really did use, so these ones that are put together that way, that is to echo the part at the front that had the lines underneath the triangles. And then this part in the middle was to echo the big triangles that was in it. So I really had a feeling when I was doing it that the back echoed the front. I'm really, really happy with it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great fun. What a great idea. Oh, and that is alternate grid because they weren't the same size blocks. So I had to put the white around it in whatever fit. Yeah, it was fun to do. I really enjoyed it. She was a good teacher too. And I do promise again, never on a holiday weekend again. I apologize.
Anybody else? Yay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so again, Elaine Cudmore, I just joined in January. This was from the Cindy Grisdella workshop on the long weekend. So I was at the trailer. My husband insisted we still had to go away on the long weekend. So trailer and by the lake. So I chose a color palette of sailing, yellow, reds, blue. Cindy had sent out notes in advance on how to pick out your colors, 6 to 8 colors. And yeah, the 6 hours just flew by. It was so much fun. And I'm mathematical and tend to overthink things. So that day I just made up my mind to just throw it together, be creative. And so this is what I came up with. And yeah, it was so much fun.
Sweet,
Yeah.
sweet. I need the microphone. Thanks. Oh, Anybody else? All right, so there's a couple of things. There's the table at the back that has things on it, not the library books, but the other table. Those came in as a donation. And the Limberlost people have taken what they would like from it. So anything that's on the table that you'd like, please help yourself. Everybody make sure that you pick up one of the President's Challenge fabrics. I'm not sure if that shows very well. There's these delightful little packages here for everybody. Okay, so pick up one of your little things here. And we'll have a little break and then we'll have our sewing if anybody's staying to sew. I brought my stuff to sew. And Lisa's got her work showing at the, can you tell us where it is?
It's at the Kellogg Lane. Kellogg Lane, there's an art show there. You just, there's no charge, just go in and walk through the building and all the art's up. It goes from last month until September. And there's some incredible art there. It's just amazing. It's outdoors and indoors. There's some sculptures outdoors and then different art indoors. It's free going.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thanks, everybody. I'm going to turn the Zoom meeting off now. Thanks, everybody who joined us virtually.
I'm going to take two so I can do one share.